It's the year 2032 and the United States has completely blocked off the illegal immigrants from entering their border. And since the illegals were already sent back to their countries, Tesla created robots to take over their jobs. Meanwhile, a man named Charles accidentally slips while ice skating, and a woman named Emily helps him get up. Days later, Charles is at work when Ted, his stepfather and the CEO, visits him. Charles says that he managed to fix the company's problem and that he also bought a flower for his mother. Ted comments on how much Charles has changed in the past year, and his son replies that he managed to pull himself out of a dark time in his life. Ted invites him for dinner, but Charles declines because he will be having a date number 4 with Emily, saying that she might be the one. Later that day, Emily invites her romantic boyfriend to her place so they can finally do it, but Charles tells him to wait until tomorrow because he wants their first time to be special. He later goes home and brings a burger for his owner, as it turns out that he is just a replica robot named C2. The real Charles has been sending out his replica to do the tedious tasks for him, like working and dating. He only comes out for the good part, like his upcoming romance with Emily. The next day, Charles hears the news about a man who is sentenced to prison because he is caught having a replica robot of himself. It turns out that advanced robots like C2 were bought from the black market and are strictly prohibited. Charles goes to Emily's house, and the woman got excited when he tells her that she will have the most amazing experience of her life. However, Emily only felt disappointed because Charles finished in just a minute. She asks when their next date will be, so Charles scans his schedule, and it turns out that he has been doing the scheme a lot. The playboy is back at the skating rink to find his next target. When he is about to make his move, a lady accidentally bumps into him. She introduces herself as Elaine, and Charles is quickly infatuated by her. He tells C2 about her, claiming that she is on a different level. C2 tells his owner that his girl number 5 wants him to meet her parents, and Charles tells him to dump her and start focusing on Elaine. C2 starts dating the lady, and he tries to impress her with his Mr. Perfect gimmicks. Although Elaine seems to be bored by it. One day, they pass by a shop where Elaine finds a bag that she likes, so C2 brings her inside and buys her 3 handbags. They also stop by the jewelry store where the robot buys his date gold bracelets, which Elaine appreciates very much. One romantic evening, C2 tells her that she is the most wonderful girl he's met, and Elaine says the same. She wants them to go to her place, but they must wait until tomorrow because she wants their first time to be special. C2 agrees as it is what he wants too. That evening, Charles is playing his video game when he hears noises. Upon opening the door, the FBI tells him that he is under arrest for keeping an illegal robot. However, it turns out to be just his friend Ashley, playing a prank on him. Charles tells him to get a real job because he seems bored. However, as robots already took over the jobs, people like Ashley are finding it hard to get employed. C2 later arrives and Charles asks him about his date with Elaine. C2 says that she is ready, and he hands Charles the address that she has written. Meanwhile, Elaine goes home and finds her robot cleaning the house. It turns out that her robot, which she calls E2, is also an illegal replica of herself. Elaine tells her robot that Charles wants to do it tomorrow, so E2 must take over. It turns out that she is doing the same scheme as Charles, except the real her is the one going out on dates to enjoy the free food and gifts. Elaine checks her record and notices that the number 8 guy has only spent $6,000 in 4 months, so she asks E2 to dump him for her. The next day, Ted invites his son to an important get-together with the board to talk about his promotion. He quickly accepts it and writes the address on the note, but then realizes that tonight is his special night with Elaine. He tells C2 to attend the get-together while he will spend the night with Elaine. However, the robot worries about the risk of them going out at the same time. Charles ignores his concern, and he gives him the note with the address, not knowing that he accidentally swapped it with the address that Elaine gave. Charles excitedly goes to the address which he thought is Elaine's house. A butler guides him to the room, and to surprise Elaine, the playboy turns off the light before entering. He mutters sexy words while unzipping his pants, but when he turns on the light, Charles is aghast to see his father and the board, who are very much confused. Embarrassed, he immediately leaves and calls his replica, but to no avail. To make matters worse, Charles checks the live feed from C2 and learns that he is already getting the action. Meanwhile, Elaine is at the pawnshop to sell the gold bracelets that Charles bought her. She checks the camera in her house and sees that her replica seems enjoying it. The robots spend the whole 5 hours getting electric, until they eventually learn to fall in love with each other. The next day, Charles finds out that his replica has not gone home yet. He finds the address through Uber and decides to get him. Meanwhile, Elaine has been waiting outside till morning, and she has no way of knowing if the guy is still inside because her robot would not answer her call. She eventually decides to get in, and moments later, Charles arrives and sneaks inside too. They are surprised to see each other, and their conversation got awkward as they talk about their intimate moment last night. A while later, they both receive calls from their replicas. Charles learns that Elaine has a replica and that she is in it only for the money and gifts. At the same time, Elaine learns that Charles has a robot too, and that all he wanted was to sleep with her. It turns out that the two humanoids decided to run away together, planning to get over the border in Mexico where robots are treated equally to humans. The two start arguing, but then Charles says they need to work together to fix it, or both of them would end up in jail. They decide to visit the creator of the illegal robots, and on their way, the two continue to argue about how they use their humanoids to deceive each other. However, they get to agree on one thing, that no human is capable of being in an exclusive relationship with someone. They later arrive at Zach's house, the creator of the illegal replicas, and tell him about what happened. Zach says that they can track the robots using GPS, but then he tells them that once they find their replicas, they will have to destroy them because they are already disobedient and dangerous. Charles does not want to put down his robot, so he calls Ashley to ask him to kidnap their replicas. They've tracked down the replicas in a motel, and using the taser guns that Zach gave them, they were able to knock out the robots. The guys carry the bodies to the car, and while Elaine is checking the bag that her replica stole from her, Ashley arrives and tries to abduct her, mistaking her for a robot. Zach uses the taser to stop Ashley, and while Charles is explaining who the guy is, the robots wake up and run away with the car. Elaine blames Charles for what happened, and the womanizer explains that he only did it because he does not want to get rid of the robots. Although struggling, Charles tries to live normally without his robot, but when he arrives at the office, he finds his father and the board looking upset. Ted shows him the security footage of him stealing hard drives and money from his colleagues, and later pees and defecates at the trash bin. His father says that he needs to take some time off as the work might have already affected him mentally. One day, he receives a call from Elaine and learns that he is not just the one having a hard time without his replica. They later meet up, and Elaine shares how she is experiencing paranoia as she is expected to sleep with 12 men so she could pay her rent. She suggests on going to Mexico to start a new life, but Charles disagrees, saying that they should hunt down the robots and kill them. After hearing this, Elaine runs to Charles's car and drives away. At the same time, the real Elaine comes out of a nearby restaurant, running after C2 who steals her Tesla and runs. E2 ditches Charles' car and rides with E2. It turns out that their replicas tried to trick their owners into going to Mexico, but then run off after hearing that they are going to kill them. Elaine later receives a text from E2, saying that they are on the way to Mexico, and the owners are glad and relieved. However, Charles receives a message from his replica, saying that they might also want to do the same. The robot sends a video feed of him and E2 carrying guns and heading to the IRS office. Moments later, they hear gunfire and people screaming for their lives. Charles brings Elaine to their family's cabin to hide for a few days while they figure out what to do next. Since Charles is too bratty in any job, Elaine had to get Woods herself, and though his job is just to light up the fireplace, Charles still fails to do it. Feeling trapped, Elaine breaks down in tears. However, when Charles opens a bottle of whiskey, the lady joins him for a drink, leading to an unexpected night of fun for the two. The next morning, Charles repaints his car, and they decide to drive and escape to Mexico. Along the way, they are pulled over by the police, and Charles immediately assumes guilt, saying that he coerced Elaine and that she is innocent. However, it turns out that the officer only pulled them over because he painted the brake lights of his car. They check the internet for mass shooting in the IRS, but none is reported. They check the video again and realizes that there are no cars in the parking lot because the office is closed on Saturdays. Plus the gunfire they hear in the video does not match the firearms that the robots are carrying, thus confirming that their replicas faked the whole thing. Charles later sees the sweet photos of their replicas in his social media account, and they realize that the robots tricked them into running away so they can steal their identity and live normally as a couple. The two decide to reclaim their lives, and they head to the house of Charles' stepdad where the robots are having a party. They wait the whole night outside the house, and when they wake up the next morning, Charles and Elaine finds out that they are getting married. They steal robot waiter outfits so they can sneak into the party, and when the couple robots are alone in their rooms, they tase and throw them into the car. They then head to a cliff and throw their replicas away. However, before they can throw E2, C2 survives and swims back to the shore. They plan to use E2 to lure C2 back, but knowing that she is no longer obedient, they head to Zach's place to get E3. It turns out that Zach agreed to make Elaine a replica for free as long as he can make an E3, which will be for his personal use. Using the wild E3 to pose as E2, they send a video to Charles' replica, making him jealous and lure him to Zach's house. As C2 rushes through the highway using a scooter, the police chase him. Upon arriving, Elaine shoots him with a taser, but it turns out that she took the paintball gun. Moments later, the police arrive and arrest the four of them. While in the cell, the two has lost their hopes, but their robots are still optimistic, saying that they are ready to die as long as they are together. Moments later, Charles got an idea, and he requests to use his phone to call his lawyer, but in reality, he is calling Ashley. Ashley then calls the station to report a robbery made by robots, and when the officer leaves to respond, the fat ninja sneaks inside and frees them from out of their cell. They decide not to kill the robots anymore, and the four of them head to Mexico, excited to have their freedom. E2 successfully crossed the border first, but when it is Elaine's turn, she gets denied because she has identical retina scan as her robot. Hearing the siren from the police car, Charles orders C2 to cross already because E2 is waiting for him. The robot worries that his owner would be arrested, but Charles says he will not leave Elaine. They bid their goodbyes and Charles thanks his robot for teaching him how to be a human. Moments later, the police arrive and scans their eyes, confirming that they aren't robots. The sheriff wants to arrest them for keeping replica robots, but the FBI asks if he's got evidence. The officer says no because someone blew up his station, and since they got nothing on them, the FBI orders to let them go, and they leave. Now that they are free, Elaine asks Charles what his plan is. Charles makes out with her, and they head back to the house to continue their wedding. The womanizer finally married the gold digger, and meanwhile in Mexico, their robots spend their lives getting electric. Did you like our movie recap? Please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. To be updated for new movie recaps, hit the notification bell.